Welcome to Geezers, Gadgets, and Gizmos, the podcast, where we explore the tools, the ideas, and the conversations that help us live longer, safer, and more independently in our senior years. Today's conversation is about something that almost every older adult has encountered personally or knows someone who has, and that's online scams. For years, the cautionary message has been simple: be careful, don't click, stay alert. But what if that's only part of the story? What if the systems themselves, the platforms we use every day, are playing a role in allowing these scams not just to exist, but to thrive? And to help us understand that, I'm joined today by Ebony White, Director of Economic Security and Social Safety Net Initiatives at the National Council on Aging. And Ebony has spent more than 15 years working to strengthen financial stability and opportunity for individuals, families, and communities, shaping initiatives that address some of the most complex challenges around economic mobility and security. Her work today sits right at the center of the issue of the growing wave of online scams and what we can actually do about it. Ebony, it's such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I feel honored just to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Now, before we get into the research, I'd love to start with you. What drew you into this work around economic security and scams affecting older adults?
Yeah, thank you. So, as you mentioned, I've been working in the economic security space for quite some time, and all of my work have been really around trying to support vulnerable populations, low income individuals and communities. And throughout that time, my goal has really always been the same. I really want to help people who don't have a voice to have pathways and opportunities for economic stability. And what really brought the issue of scams to the forefront for me is that, so during my tenure at the National Council on Aging, our mission has always been around creating the conditions for all to age well. And as someone who also has a parent who went into retirement a few years back, I know for a fact that we have many older adults living on limited incomes. We also have the increased cost of living. And due to health advancements, we know that people are living longer. And if they were to be scammed, it would be hard for them to really be able to recover. And one of the things that you mentioned is that it's really embedded in our everyday lives, right? And so as scams have quietly become one of the biggest threats to older adults' financial security, it's important for me to not only talk a lot about retirement savings, benefits, and planning, but if someone was to lose all of that, their life savings to a scam, it can completely undo decades of careful planning, and it could really set people up for a ripple effects of impact that even goes beyond financial.
Well, the impact is just tremendous, and my heart breaks whenever I hear stories about folks who, like you mentioned, have lost their entire savings and now have nothing to fall back on. It's
Mhm.
unbelievable. When you started digging into the research you've done, especially over the past 15 years, is there anything that surprised even you the more you learned about what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, yes, there's a couple of things. What really surprised me most, though, is how widespread scams are becoming, how sophisticated they have become, and that it's not about people being gullible or people being careless. We really have some highly targeted, well-designed schemes that exploit trust, urgency, and isolation. And one thing that stood out is just how patient scammers are. Like they don't rush anymore. They may spend months building trust, checking in regularly with people, offering emotional support, even creating a sense of companionship. And all this happens long before money is even mentioned. And so even when red flags begin to appear, people sometimes look past them because they value that connection or this is when like isolation may play a big part. And so scammers understand this and they deliberately exploit emotions like loneliness, trust. And with the rise of the tools that we have as far as AI that can do things like mimic someone's voice or the identity platforms or and tools that exist, it's just created a whole new level of risk. And so it's just really alarming how quickly these technologies are advancing without any meaningful safeguards in place to make sure our consumers are protected. And it's really putting all the onus on the consumers to not be, tricked into these scams. And the other thing I'll say is it's not just one scam. It's not just the romance scam, for example. They are layering the different types of scams on top of each other, which makes this even more complicated and hard to detect. So the sophistication is really high.
Yeah, I was as I'm listening to you speak, that word you use, patience. They're very
Yeah.
content, these scammers, to just take their time and work themselves into that senior's life. To me,
Yeah.
that's frightening because I always thought of scams as in and out, real quick.
hmm
Either they hook the person or they don't. But you bring up a much more subtle, much more powerful dynamic going on.
Yeah.
It blows me away.
It's scary. It's scary. It's really scary. And you wonder, like, do you have a heart to play with people's emotions like that?
The other thing you said too, it really struck me about layers. Scammers can build layers. Does that mean they'll suck you into one type of scam, get you hooked, and then use that to scam you again in some other way?
Yeah, so there's some scams where they might um begin to connect with you, let's say as a friendship or romance or something like that. And then that can then turn into, oh, guess what? I have this investment that really went good for me. And next thing you know, they're introducing you to Bitcoins, right? And then at the same time, it could be, they can also be drawing other types of information from you to then draw you into other layers of scams as well. And so a lot of times people, don't really understand the sophistication behind some of the things that happen. They also have scams right now where they combine tech support scams with some of the banking scams. And so it's really interesting the layers that they are doing now to make it hard for people to detect what's happening.
Man, why don't folks report scams? You would think there'd be a proliferation of people reporting scams, but it seems to me there's something going on more deeply than just the financial impact that causes people not to bring it up, to report it.
Yeah, unfortunately, shame, embarrassment, it's a huge factor. People blame themselves. And the fact is, it don't matter your age, it don't really matter your race, your educational background. All of us, honestly, can be impacted by scams. But I would say for older adults, specifically, another reason why they don't want to report sometimes is because they worry that maybe their family members will think they no longer are capable of managing their own finances. Or there's also some confusion about where to report. There's skepticism around like if anything is going to actually happen, because there's so many stories out here that when people do report, they're still out of their money, right? And so I think in addition to people really being able to talk about it with their family members and have someone to go to, some trusted people within their circle. We have to get to a point where we can centralize the fact that people of all ages could be impacted by this. The unfortunate part is that older adults are losing the most money financially.
Just like you were talking about how a scammer can go after a victim on multiple layers, the same goes true of the victim, what they experience from, potentially a financial loss, an emotional loss,
Hmm.
distancing from family. So that's a really scary thought of just how deep the damage um, can be. And you brought up such an interesting point too about how the first thing folks go to is self-blame. And one of the most striking findings that I had in reading the research was how perceptions change once people understand how social media platforms work. Like initially, like you were saying, many older folks blame themselves, but the pattern is that changes once they understand the platforms, right?
Yeah.
And what they've done. What's going on there in terms of that shift?
Yeah, so as we know that older adults, they're facing just constant content in their feeds. If they're someone who's online, engaging, with social media, in today's world, social media is one of the biggest ways people are engaging with people. We also have a lot of our services now that's being done online, and so in some ways, you have no choice but to be online. And so there's this constant feed of different types of things that people are seeing, from fake Instagram ads to fake government benefit ads. They encounter multiple scams through online shopping. We know that there's some Medicare and Social Security impersonations. We have tech support scams. Everybody know about the grandmother, grandpa, father scams. And what makes that even scarier now is now that they have voice cloning that can easily be done with phone apps. And so when a problem is this widespread, it stops being about individual bad actors and it really becomes a systemic issue, a systemic failure. And, as I mentioned before, the impact goes beyond money. And one of the things that we recently did, in reference to the research that you mentioned, we held some focus groups with people 55 and older to really help them understand the mechanics, excuse me, behind fake ads on social media platforms and how companies profit from them. And once people realize how platforms are making money off of scam ads and the fake profiles, and how platforms, especially big tech companies, are able to have these targeted algorithms to really target them, the conversation really began to shift. They really start to understand, oh, I don't actually have to deal with this all the time. Like it really shifts from why did I click this? Why did I share this? To why are these even popping up in my feed so much anyways? You know? And then when we compared it to some of the practices, for example, that Amazon have in place, th- then they were like, oh, well, there is something that can be done. And they really start to say, okay, it's not on us. This is a shared responsibility. Yes, I
Mm.
need to understand the red flags, but at the same time, these platforms need to do more to prevent some of these things, which is obvious harm that's happening to people.
You and the National Council on Aging are doing such a phenomenal job in all the research you do, all the publications, all the education. Are you seeing seniors more and more now emerging as an advocacy group to prevent scams? And if so, what are they asking for the most?
You know, So that's an interesting question. So yes, we definitely, with the research we did, this was one of our first times really trying to bring older people's voice to this issue in a way that was beyond the education provision that we do. And so one of the things that I would say that they want is they want more transparency. They want accountability. They want prevention, like really baked into these platforms. Things like advertiser verifications,
Mhm.
faster scam takedowns by acting on early warning signs because they have the tools and they know when they see some warning signs. And so, really, some of the things that I have began to see, but we need more of it, is like warn users about risky ads or risky profiles or potential scams. The other thing I would say is clear reporting pathways because a lot of people are just really confused about when and how to report, especially for things that's happening on social media platforms. And then they also want to hold the platforms financially accountable. So, like, if they don't do these things, then they should be financially accountable for this. And so, most importantly, they just want to feel like their safety is a priority over the profits that platforms are getting. And so we know already that platforms have some sophisticated fraud tools because they use them for payments, for example. So applying similar systems like to advertising accounts could just make it really easier for them to help minimize the impact of fake ads.
It's a real challenge for seniors living in such a digital age where so much of their connectedness, be it with friends, families, social groups, whatever it might be, is so
Mhm.
embedded in how we communicate today and
Mhm.
the systems we rely on. How do you envision us getting to that point that you were just talking about and making the systems accountable? If you were to look into your crystal ball, where do you see us moving to? How long do you think we'll need to get there, and what is it going to take?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Now, I definitely don't know how long it would take because we didn't get here overnight. So it's definitely going to take some time, and it's going to actually be a cross-sector effort. It's a lot of different players, a lot of different stakeholders that's involved that all have to come to the table and hold a piece of this pie. One of the things I will say, though, that I do see is that we know for a fact we need stronger protections. We know that platforms have the capability of doing more than what they're doing. The problem is we don't have regulations in place to help enforce these type of practices. So I honestly think we need to continue to grow um, a a coalition around really how can we get some of these changes, just like some of the recent wins for holding social media platforms for how they engage with youth, we need the same thing for older adults. And so I think some of the work that we're seeing now in the industry around youth is really giving us some models and some lessons learned on how we can do the same thing for older adults. And to be honest, I know we're talking about older adults, but it would be beneficial for all of us,
Mhm.
because it's coming up in all of our feeds and it's coming up through email, through text messages. And so really trying to help people to understand like there are things that's in place, they just don't use them. Like, for example, even when they take people down, people can have over 30 instances of doing something that would be considered a warning sign, but they don't actually take them down to like the 35th. And so like really like, okay, that's a perfect example of how instead of waiting until 35 times for them to do it, take them down after the first, second time, and make it be known to consumers that they're under review. And so that's where some of the transparency I think could happen. And then I think also we know that our financial institutions have been, under fire for a while around some of these things. And we also know that they have a lot of limitations just, due to personal privacy and, things like that. And so but they have also moved forward. And so I feel like our financial institutions have also been um, able to figure out a way to, yes, make sure that consumers are protected, but at the same time, give them the information and education that they need. Is it perfect? No. But they're at least doing some things. And I think if we can push other industries to do the same, and also to share that information. So I think we will be like if financial institutions and police, everyone was to actually share their information around scams, I think it would actually allow us to have more data to be able to see the patterns, to be able to see how we can crack down on some of these sophisticated scams because they have whole business practices, like businesses, sound businesses on scamming people now. And so we have to come together, and I think we need to share information to be able to really see what those patterns are, to really be able to position then our enforcement agencies to be able to then go after them to shut them down.
What you're saying is really, I get excited listening to you. Not only are you eloquent, but insightful because what I'm taking away from what you said is there's a ton of information out there. It's just not available. It's not being shared, whatever that might be. So
Mhm.
there's probably a lot more we can do if we had that information available to act on.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. But it's all about, I feel like our our AI is growing vastly, and I feel like it's growing, but a lot of our other systems are not moving along with it at the same pace. And when I say that, I mean like the consumer protection piece, the policy piece we're lagging behind. In the design of many of these platforms, they prioritize growth and engagement over safety. That's just what it is. And so that creates an environment where scams can flourish, even if facilitation isn't intentional. If systems reward speed and volume without strong guardrails, harm just becomes part of the process.
Incredible. It, for the individual senior listening today, uh, what advice would you give her or him to give them a sense of control or empowerment or something they can do to feel like I'm not totally a victim. There is something I can do.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely something we can do. It's really around being knowledgeable around what are some of the top common scams that they should be aware of. We know that there are fake government agencies ads, and so anytime you see something like that, I would definitely recommend you go straight to the actual official website to fact check whatever information you're seeing. And if it's not on that website, it's not legit. Same thing with tech support. Like anything, anytime you get anyone that comes to you where it's unexpected, I would question it. And even if it's something that you might think you're interested in, I would again go to a verified website versus going through whatever email you get, whatever link you get, because they're also sending a lot of links and information through text messages. I would also say, in terms of the grandmother or the grandfather scam, a lot of families these days because of the voice cloning, they have code words that they will say. So people use code words, and if they don't know that code word, then you know it's not your family. And so really understanding how to know the signs, but then know also how to check things. And so there are definitely signs of anything that has urgency in it, I'll say secrecy, like they don't want you to say something or they don't want you to get off the phone. There's a pressure to act quickly. All those are signs of a scam because they want you to react off of your emotion. And so definitely anything that wants you to react to off of your emotion, I don't care how dramatic it may feel, just stop, pause, and really go to the actual source. Don't go off of what you're hearing. And then I would also say anything that has to do with payments for gift cards, crypto, all major red flags. There's no business that's an official business that wants you to pay with gift cards or crypto. That's not how business practices go. So if something feels off, pause, don't engage further, and just talk to a trusted person, even if you need to verify that. And I will also say there's some good tools out here now where you can verify phone numbers, you can verify messages. So there are, in addition to a lot of tools that unfortunately scammers are using, um, there's also tools for us to be able to help combat those. And so definitely check into some of the tools. I know some too that I can provide. They have websites that's happening to do the same thing. And I mean, I personally just dealt with something earlier this week where someone tried to trick me, so it hit home for me recently, and it was something that I initiated. I initiated a call by Googling for a customer service number for Southwest Airlines. The number looked legit to me, so it didn't raise any alarms for me at first. But then once I was on the call, and the interaction just quickly started to feel strange. The person asked me questions that weren't typical and didn't align with standard questions or practices that I would normally get. And as someone who travel a lot, I knew something was wrong. And so and all I was trying to do was simply change a flight. And so when I decided not to go forward, of course, because for one, he was trying to charge me $700. I was like, you're crazy. But in addition to that, you know, um, he just he seemed off. He didn't seem like he knew what he was talking about. And when I declined to pay the 700, he quickly pivoted and tried to get me to pay an additional tax fee, claiming it wasn't
Whoa.
already. Yeah, and I'm like, everybody knows that tax fees are already included in your flight when you buy it. And so he was like, no, it's a new policy, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. No. Anytime there's a new policy, I would have received something in the mail. I wouldn't, it just all was wrong. And so I quickly got off the phone and then I made a point to go to the Southwest Airlines website this time, found the number, called them through there, and didn't have an issue after that. But I did report it to them. And I would also say report it to the Federal Trade Commission because they're the ones who really are trying to capture all this. So reporting matters. So even if you don't get scammed, you want to report it because like businesses want to know if they're being impersonated because they have a way of tracking that stuff as well.
Boy, that underscores just how pervasive the whole online scam scenario is. Thanks for sharing that
Yeah.
example from your own life. Unbelievable. How do folks best use the NCOA site? How can they use that as a resource?
We have a Savvy Saving Seniors curriculum, and it's a financial curriculum, but we have one specific section that is specific to scams, and it talks about the top 12 scams that target older adults. We call it the Dirty Dozen. And so the way that the material is on there, it is targeted for professionals who we see are typically like the trusted ears of some seniors. And so just thinking about community-based organizations like senior centers and elsewhere. And so it has a facilitator's guide, it has the PowerPoint, the participant guide. And so that is material that we have for um, professionals, but we also have a lot of good resources and articles around other specific scams. And as scams come up, we try to, update and keep people updated. So we have a newsletter that if you want to join our newsletter, it'll just keep you in the know of things that's happening. But then at the same time, if you're interested in just knowing like what are the signs of certain scams and what should I do? How do I report? All that is available on our website and everything is free.
Ebony, I don't know how to begin to even thank you enough for all this incredibly valuable information and for sharing your time with us. I feel like we've only scratched the surface, but you've given us so many good tools and directions to go in to protect ourselves, from these online scams. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you bringing this issue to your audience, and bring me back.
Oh, we will definitely bring you back. There's no doubt about it. And for our listeners, age well, stay curious, and live resiliently.
Subscribe and hit the bell so you'll never miss an episode of Geezers, Gadgets, and Gizmos.